The 9 elements. 1. The IEP has to include your kid's current level of performance in all areas, okay? In all of the areas. That's academic, that's social, emotional, behavioral, OT, PT, whatever the areas are that they evaluated. We need the current level of performance in those areas, especially academic, okay? We need measurable academic and functional annual goals, okay? So the goals have to be measurable, okay? Measurable is, so let's say your kid is going to get OT. So let's say the goal is that Johnny will write a sentence that includes a noun, verb, noun. Little Johnny will be able to write a complete sentence using noun, verb, noun. 3 out of 4 opportunities with 80% accuracy across 3 consecutive sessions across 3 consecutive months. That's a measurement. I don't know what they're doing in some of these IEPs. It's like they just flunked IEP development. It's like they missed everything. But anyway. So, and then the next thing is one of the questions is, how will the student meet the annual goals, such as quarterly IEP progress reports? So, what they have to prove, so if they write an IEP, and I've seen this lately, if they write an IEP, they have to provide your kid with they have to provide you with information specific to that IEP, quarterly IEP progress reports. Okay, so when they give your kid so your kid could end up with 2 progress reports, especially if your kid is getting regular ed and special ed. Okay, but for special education, it's got to come with the IEP. It's IEP quarterly IEP progress reports, and you have to ask them, is that what I'm going to get? And if they say no, you say, okay, put it in writing. It's not getting that, because then how are you measuring this? How are you going to know, or how am I going to know if my kid met the IEP goals if I'm not getting any progress reports? So every quarter, like everybody else, I should know how he's doing with this IEP. Is it? So therefore, it's not being monitored. If they're not going to do it that way, it's not being monitored. Special education related services and supplemental aids and any program modification. So is your kid getting any of that stuff? And if your kid is, it's got to be in the IEP. A reason why a student would be separated from non-disabled peers. So if your kid's getting a pullout, they have to put in why he's getting a pullout. If your kid is 60% of the time, or 50%, or 40% of the time, or 20% of the time in an alternate setting, a significantly separate program, for that amount of time per day, they have to put in why. They have to state why that is. Okay? The type of accommodation, such as a slant board, frequent breaks, preferential seat, all of that, those are accommodations. They have to be in the IEP. Okay? There are times where there's no accommodations. It's very unusual that a kid on an IEP doesn't need any accommodations. Okay? Kids with ADHD, they may not need like accommodations like, well, they do need a computer sometimes, but they'll need frequent breaks. They're going to need praise. They're going to need preferential seating. They're going to need to be able to take like tests and quizzes in an alternate setting to minimize the distractions, to keep them focused. So those are the kinds of things for a kid with ADHD. That's an accommodation. A child in a wheelchair will need a ramp to get into the classroom. Okay? A child that is blind will need help navigating or training, but navigating the school system, the school room and the classroom. Or they'll need Braille. They'll need everything put in. An accommodation would be that all of the documents that kid has, if the child is blind, the child would need everything in Braille. Okay? Those are accommodations. So it's got to be in there. If your kid's getting it and they agree, it's got to be in there. A start and end date for each service. Frequency and duration. So it's got to have. So if your kid's getting OT in the IEP somewhere, it's got to say a start and end date, frequency, how often your kid is getting, and how often he gets it. The frequency is how often does your kid get it, like 1 time a week, and the duration is the 30 minutes. So it has to say like the start and end date, which usually would be the IEP start and end date, and then the frequency and duration would be the 1 times 30, 3 times 60, whatever. That's what it is. Okay, that has to be in there. The IEPs have to be updated annually. I just had a parent tell me that the school district said that they're only writing an IEP for 6 months, but the IEP has to be written annually. It has to be updated annually, not every 6 months. And if it's going to be every 6 months, then the parent has to agree to that ahead of time. Otherwise, it's a violation. Okay, so if the kid is 18, you need to get a paper signed with your child that says it's the age of majority, not later than 1 year prior to his or her 18th birthday, explaining the transfer of rights from the parent to the student. Okay, now, the transfer of rights, that can be done in combination. So the parent and the child can agree that the parent is going to help them make educational decisions. And that goes in the transfer rights. Okay, or in some cases, you have guardianship papers. If you have guardianship papers, all you have to do is present that to the school, and then it just stays the way it's been all of these years. Okay, those are the 9 elements. If this is the first time you're looking at an IEP, this is what it should look like. And even this IEP was revised. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. This is an example of an IEP. Okay, now all IEPs are not the same. They're not set up the same or nothing. So you have to look for this information in your IEP. What you have to look for is the goal in the IEP. Every single IEP across the United States has a page that has goals. Okay, it'll say goal. And then it'll tell you what the goal is. It'll say academic readiness skills, okay? And then it'll say, the next line is current performance level for that thing is what they're talking about. Not all over the place, but just that one thing. That's what your kid can do for that particular thing. Now, the next thing that you're going to look for is the measurable annual goal. Okay? Now, some states have goals and objectives. Some states just have goals. And what they'll do is they'll combine the goals and objectives together, okay? Because the goals and objective, the goal has to include measurements. So this one, for instance, says, by the end of the IEP period, so-and-so will increase her academic readiness skills through matching pictures to pictures of objects, identifying colors and shapes, and increasing class participation as measured by the following objectives. So in states that just have goals, it would just say, and increasing class participation as measured by, number 1, will increase her functional communication by matching 10 pictures of various objects to pictures of the same objective objects. Okay, for instance, a picture of a spoon. Okay, in 8 out of 10 opportunities across 3 consecutive sessions. Okay, the next one. We'll complete a picture activity schedule with 5 activities with 80% accuracy across 3 consecutive sessions, and so on and so forth. So it's either broken up into 2 things or it's all combined into one, okay? And that's the goals and objectives or the benchmarks, okay? So any of those words, they have to be in there. Like I said, some states have goals and objectives, and some states just have goals, okay? But your question is to them, if it doesn't have it and it doesn't seem clear, you just ask them, how are you going to know my kid met that goal? And then they'll say all these words and stuff, and you say, well, good, I want that in the IEP because that's missing. So that 8 out of 10 times, identify 5 in 8 out of 10 times, identify 5 shapes in 8 out of 10 opportunities. All of that stuff is measurable. That has to go in your kid's IEP, okay? IEP accommodations, okay? There's always a page that talks about the accommodations that your kid's going to get, okay? So this is all of the areas that your kid needs these accommodations, okay? So sometimes it's just one thing, sometimes it's all of them. In this instance, it was everything, okay? And so it's basically saying all academic areas, the disability impacts the student's learning. So that's what those check boxes are, okay? And this is why, for the general curriculum, this is why we need, on the bottom, it'll say what types of accommodation. So in this IEP, it says a ball seat when needed, teacher modeling, pictorial schedule, review and practice previously taught skills. These are actual accommodations for a kid. Okay. And then one of the questions is, how does the disability affect progress in the curriculum areas? Disabilities hinder her ability to make effective gains in academic, daily living, and social skills without modification and significant adult assistance. Okay? And see the category, it says multiple disabilities. This is what your accommodation, somewhere you have an accommodation page. Somewhere in the IEP, you have a disability category. You want to know what that disability category is. Because a lot of schools, if a kid has autism, parent walks in with a diagnosis of autism, the school district will put emotional disturbance. Emotional disturbance and autism, two different things. The difference between them: emotional disturbance, the kid just gets anxiety, and occasionally the child will be able to go see the counselor. Autism, all kinds of stuff could be going on with that kid. So there's a significant difference in how much services could cost for one versus the other. So you want to make sure your kid has the right category. You ask them, where's the category? What's the category you put my kid under? That should be part of the discussion when you're discussing determination of eligibility. Where's your kid going to go? And sometimes they'll skip over it because they don't want to discuss that with you. They want it to be a big surprise. So when you get the IEP, you don't even know what you're looking at. You're going to know. And this is where they break it all down. In Massachusetts, this is called the service delivery page. Okay? This is called the service delivery page. And what it is it breaks down all of the services. Now, every state has this. So it tells me about the cycle. So every 5 days, that's one cycle. Okay? So, for instance, on the bottom, it'll say 5 times 130 minutes a day. So it's every day. When it says that, that means it's every day. If this 5-day cycle gets a 5 times 5 days, that's 5 days every day. Okay? Social, behavioral, academics, they get it 5 times 130 minutes a week. Okay? The next one, instructional support, 5 times 340 a week. Minutes per week. Okay. ABA school, 4 times 120. So that's the duration. Okay? So here we go. The start and end date. And then we have duration, frequency, and duration. It's all there. And then over here it says the type of service that's being delivered and the type of personnel. Now, a lot of IEPs don't have all of the same information in it. But that doesn't mean you can't ask. Who are these people delivering these services? What are their expertise? Okay? That's what you can ask for. Now, see, we have consultation. We have grid B is special education and related services in the general ed classroom, direct services, okay, in general ed, and then we have it in other settings in grid C, okay. So this child is being pulled out like 60% of the time. They're in a regular ed setting. I mean, they're in a special ed setting, and only like 20% or whatever, 40% of the time. Yeah, 40% of the time the kid is in a regular ed classroom, and even then they're with a co-taught regular ed and special ed teacher. Okay, the consultation piece is important too. I like to put in consultation in my IEPs because the consultation is between the teachers and the parent, so you can do it once a month for 30 minutes. So you have all of the providers once a month meeting with you to give you an update on what the hell's going on with your kid. So that gives you an opportunity to collect any documents that you might need once a month, collect any data sheets that they're using that they said they're collecting data. This is a good way to force them to do the collection of data. Okay, a lot of schools say they're collecting data, but they really aren't. They're not doing poo-poo caca. Okay, and then at the end, when you need that information, now everybody's scrambling because they don't know where to go get the information. So because they never collected it, so now they got to go make it up, which makes them look really bad. But if you have, as part of your kid's IEP, a monthly consultation with each provider, it's like a team meeting, and you all get together and they provide you with all of the data they collected. They give you all of your son's or your daughter's work that they've completed in a portfolio that they're collecting, and they're putting in samples of your kid's work, all of the samples. And then you're doing the same thing at home with homework. Okay, so you can add the consultation piece into your IEP so that you have an opportunity to meet with these people once a month, all of them, and it's a team meeting. Okay. And this is the placement page. This is where you discuss full inclusion, partial inclusion, separately, significantly separate, a public separate day school. See, you can use some of these terms with the school. This is, like I said, this IEP is not straight, it's not mandated, but these are the components that are in all IEPs, no matter if they're set up this way or not. Okay, so those are all the how your kid could go into, and most of the time, if your kid is on an IEP and your kid's in a regular ed classroom, once your kid goes in there, it's called inclusion. Okay, and what it is your kid is with an IEP and your kid is in a regular ed classroom receiving IEP services. Okay, and the teacher has to implement the IEP. The regular ed teacher has to implement the IEP. Now, most schools have co-taught classrooms with special ed and regular ed in an inclusion setting. Okay. Now, when the district gives you your IEP for you to sign, they're supposed to sign it first before they give it to you. Okay. And then in Massachusetts, you have options. You can accept, reject in part. But what I'm telling parents nowadays is do not reject the IEP. And the reason why I'm saying this is the rule of thought before was if you reject the IEP, then whatever you didn't reject, that goes into play right away. However, school districts in Massachusetts especially have decided that when a parent rejects an IEP that they can take them to hearing, even though they can't. They do it anyway. Which the parent now has to go through a hearing with a stupid hearing officer who's under the impression that the school district could get consent override to override the parent's rejection, and by the hearing officer saying that the IEP is appropriate. Okay, so they can't do that. It's a violation. And so to stop all the nonsense, accept the IEP, because I got a letter from OSEP and I specifically asked them, does a parent have to reject an IEP in order to file a complaint about the IEP? The response was, to file a complaint, all you have to cite a violation of the idea. Thank you very much. So the violation of the idea is, to file a complaint on an IEP, is that the IEP is not reasonably calculated to address your kid's unique needs, or the school district didn't implement this, or the IEP doesn't include doesn't have measurable goals. You see, there's lots of things in the IEP that you can file a complaint on that's a violation of the law. So just do yourself a favor and accept the IEP. It doesn't matter. You got to get something implemented. Just do it. The law says in order to file a complaint, you have to cite a violation. There's a whole bunch of pages under 300.320 through 328 about the IEP that I'm telling you. If you don't like the way the IEP is written, then you can dispute it. And you can accept it at the same time. And now, the only time you want to do that, reject the IEP, is when you need the components of the previous IEP and the new IEP, and the district is refusing to do that. So if they pulled a service out, but they didn't evaluate to determine that your kid didn't need it, or you have an evaluation that says your kid continues to need it, and the district says they didn't, and they pulled it out anyway, even after your recommendations from your evaluation said your kid continues to need that particular service, then what you do is reject the proposed IEP, and then the last accepted IEP by both parties, that's the one that's still in play. Okay? Just remember that. When you reject an IEP, the last accepted IEP is the one that's in place. It doesn't just stop. It's not like you didn't take away services. So you just said you didn't like the proposed IEP. So if the district stops services, that's a denial of faith 100%. Because the only way you can resolve this is to get it resolved so that the district does what they need to do by modifying the proposed IEP, and that way both parties have accepted the IEP. Okay, so the old IEP is still in place until a new IEP is accepted. That's the way it works. Okay, no matter what they tell you, that's the way it works. I know I've done it. All is just, take a piece of paper and just look at your kid's IEP or the one they proposed to you, and just put down the page number, the section number, and just write it, or go on their website and get a copy of a blank one. Go on there on the department in your state, the Department of Education website. All you have to do is type in, like, for instance, you would put PA special education forms, IEP forms. That's all you have to put. And it'll usually just pop up. And then it'll take you right to where those forms are, under the State Department of Education, whatever that department is in your state. Okay? And then just the important things that you want in your kid's IEP for specific sections, that's what you want in there. You want that IEP to represent the evaluations, all of the deficits. That's what you need, because that's what the IEP is for. The IEP is for the deficits in your child's academic learning, in your child's daily functioning, in all areas. Okay? So what you want is the evaluations to be clearly represented in the IEP, because if it's not, then the IEP is not reasonably calculated to address your child's unique needs. It's not. Like, for instance, if they change your disability category from autism to emotional disturbance, those are two different categories. They're very, very different. One of the things that's really different about them, besides the medical diagnosis in the DSM-5, besides that, is the money. It costs way more money for the school to educate a child with autism 9 times out of 10 than it would a kid that has emotional disturbance, which is why they changed the diagnosis to meet their needs. That's why you have to be prepared when you go to these meetings. You have to have your own IEP to counter theirs. And every time you ask for something and they say no, they have to put it in writing. So if they're telling you they're not going to give your kid the diagnosis of autism, because they can't diagnose your kid, by the way. Okay, they can't. They can tell you which category your kid might be in. But based on that category will determine the level of service your child will get, the level of support your child will get, or the placement your child will get. Okay? The category is very, very important. You want to know what that is. You want to make sure that you tell them, no, the doctor said my kid's got autism, not emotional disturbance. And so when they say, well, we're going to put emotional disturbance, you say, good. I object to that. I'm going to dispute it. I need you to put it in writing. Okay? You need to do 34 CFR 300.503, prior written notice. That's what they need to do. Okay? And when you're writing up your kid's IEP, you use the evaluations you just got. You look at the recommendations to support your reasonable request. So anytime you ask for something, you go straight to that evaluation where it said your kid needed it. And if it doesn't say that, then that's a problem for the school district. So you say, no, I want it. This is what it says right here. And you go in and before you go to the meeting, you take a highlighter and you highlight all of your kid's deficits and all of the areas that your kid was assessed, because that's a service your kid needs. You need to bring up your kid's weaknesses to meet your kid's strengths. If the IEP doesn't do that, then the IEP is not worth the paper it's written on, period. So be prepared for your meetings. If the determination of eligibility is a finding of no special needs, then you have rights. You have the right to appeal that decision. You can use due process procedures and reject the determination. First of all, reject. You just tell them, I reject your findings. And you put it in writing. And you can request an independent evaluation. Or rather than you requesting them to do an IEE at public expense, what you do is you take your insurance and you go get your own evaluations done. Then when they're all done, you go back to the school, you give it to them, and you say, see, I just proved you wrong. Now I need this service. And see, now, the reason why I say you do it on your own is because when the school districts want to do independent evaluations, they're not supposed to, the only thing they're supposed to do is you pick the person you want to do it based on their criteria that they gave you, okay? And then what they want to do now is they want to do a whole bunch of stuff. You see, they want to know all kinds of information. They want to have consent for them to talk to your independent evaluator. No. Then it's not an independent evaluation. And they want to talk to they want you to give them consent so that they can talk to the independent evaluator without you being aware of the conversation. And they don't tell you why they want to talk. Let me tell you why they want to talk to them 90% of the time. To tell them the areas that they want the evaluator to evaluate. That's not an independent evaluation. That's a school district's evaluation. Okay? So be careful when you're asking for an IE at public expense. Be very, very careful, because the schools will have a way to manipulate the situation to their benefit. But if you get it done without them even knowing you're doing it, until you hand it to them, they're screwed. They couldn't manipulate the situation. They couldn't do anything. And when they'll find out that you're getting the evaluation done is when your evaluator sends the school district the questionnaires for the teachers and stuff to fill out. That's when they'll find out. But you make sure you tell your evaluator, under no circumstances are you to have any conversations with these people unless I'm on the phone. I want to know what they're asking you. And you tell them you're not getting it until the day of, because you can write up your consent for them to speak to them. That's for 1 day only. That's for this amount of time only. And you can be on the phone. Consent, you get to determine how that consent is. And if the evaluator won't go for that, then you move on to another evaluator. Okay? An independent evaluation is in areas that you are disputing and is your right. Okay? See, the school district can't tell you, well, we didn't evaluate in that area, so you can't either. Well, you're bad. That's what you tell them. It's your bad, because you were supposed to evaluate my kid in all areas of suspected disability, and you did not. This is why I tell you, don't go to them. Go get it done yourself. There are a few occasions where parents actually win, and it makes sense. But lately, I'm telling you, parents have fought hard to get independent evaluations, and when they get them, there's a whole lot of manipulation going on, because a lot of these evaluators are in the school district's back pocket. So if you're looking for evaluators right in your area, then what's going to happen is these evaluators have been doing these evaluations for the school districts under contract for years. Some evaluators will come out and you'll say, well, I want the Orton Gillingham for my kid, and I need you to do an evaluation. And they'll look at you and say, well, the school district doesn't have that service over there. Now you got to leave. Because it's not the evaluator's job to tell you about what they have or don't have at that school. Your evaluator only has one job: evaluate your kid. It's none of the evaluator's business, nor does it have anything to do with the evaluation of your child about what the district has or doesn't have available. Because the district has a lot of stuff available. All they have to do is pay for it. That's all they have to do. They have to pay for it because the law says they have to provide it. If it means your kid needs it, then the law says they have to provide it. Period. It's called FAPE. In order for your kid to access the general curriculum, your kid needs Orton Gillingham or something comparable to Orton Gillingham, not some fly-by-night screening instrument. Okay. Furthermore, a screening instrument is against the law. So, obtaining an IEE may assist you in narrowing the issues in an appeal, or it may help improving and supporting the request that the district has denied, which could prevent a due process hearing. Okay, so you're going to get ahead of it, is what you're trying to do. Okay, so you gave them what you want. You let them do their evaluation, and they came back and said no. Then you went and got an independent done that you funded yourself, either through your insurance or you came out of pocket for the money. Okay? And then you proved the district wrong. Now, whether the district's paying for the IEE or you do, here's the thing. The district only has to consider what's written in there. That's it. There's no law that says they have to accept it, even if they're paying for it. So why go through all the nonsense with them if they don't even have to accept it? What you want to do is you want to line up your ducks. Okay? Don't worry about what they're doing. You want to make sure that the evaluator has one agenda: your kid. Period. Nothing else. Nothing else matters. Only your kid. I don't care. The evaluator should say that I have one agenda: your kid. I don't care about that. I don't care about what their financial or budgetary issues are. That's none of my business. My business is this right here. And if an evaluator starts to bring up what the school's problems are, you need to leave the building and say, thank you very much, but I no longer need your service. Goodbye, and walk out the door and go find you another one. Reputable, with integrity and character. Because an evaluator that tells you they're more worried about what the school can and cannot give, you need to just put it on a piece of paper. Because what if the parent wants to pay for it herself? That's why the evaluator can't care about what the school district has, because that evaluator doesn't know how much money you have or how much money you make in the bank or whatever. That evaluator has nothing to do with your finances. They don't know what you can pay for and what you can't pay for. And just because you're going to them doesn't mean that, you can't afford this. What you want to know, and that's what you tell them. Look, I just want you to tell me what my kid needs. But I'm telling you, if an evaluator tells you that, you need to leave. You need another evaluator. Okay? And it's all about lining up your ducks. This whole thing is about lining up your duck. Keep a paper trail tight. Keep a tight paper trail. Okay? Keep samples of your kids' works. Date, sign, and copy any correspondence to and from the school, which is email. Email covers all of that. Okay? Email is wonderful because contemporaneous notes are things that happen in the moment. They're notes that were taken by a person for an incident that happened in that moment, which carries a lot of weight. Not 6 months down the line, not a year, not a month ago, but right in that moment. As soon as the thing happened, the person put it in writing and said, on such and such a date, we had a conversation, and I requested this, and I need your response in writing. That's contemporaneous. That carries a lot of weight with the hearing officer or with the state because it proves that you made that request. It proves that you asked them to provide you with prior written notice if they are refusing. And it could prove that they didn't do their job. Wonderful. That's why you need it. Request evaluations if more than 2 years old or an independent, if school testing is less than 16 months old. So what I'm trying to say there is you don't want to have testing done. I mean, there are circumstances where a kid needs to be evaluated more often than 2 years. And those children are very, very complex. Whatever their disability is, it's very severe in all areas of functioning. So you need those evaluations done every year. However, less than 2 years for, a child with a disability who's not that complex, has a disability, but I mean, for a kid with autism, everybody says, well, autism is complex, but no. Unless your child is globally delayed in all areas of functioning and has a very, very low IQ, okay? And your kid is say your kid is 13 and the kid has an IQ of a 3-year-old, that child may need an evaluation less than every 2 years, okay? But a child with dyslexia, every 2 years is fine. A child with ADHD, fine. Emotional disturbance, every 2 years is fine, okay? The reason why it's every 2 years, most reputable people in the field will not do a psychological evaluation because the child may remember or be familiar with that test. Now, maybe they may not remember what they put in, but they recognize it. The cool thing, the thing about the testing is that the person has never seen it before, okay? And that's what's good. That could give you a better, that test that the person has never seen before will give you a better representation of what that test is, of what the results would represent for that particular person, okay? I know that was a lot crazy, but less than 2 years, the child has a tendency to remember what that test is. And the child remembers the test, it could skew the results in favor of the school district, okay? So that if the kid is familiar with the test, then the kid will do better on the test. It's like anything. If you take a test right now, and then a year from now you take that exact same test, you might score better. Now, because it's familiar, okay? So you don't want to do it you don't want to do it less than every 2 years, unless your child is very complex. How to support your reasonable requests. Request evaluations in all suspected or known areas of concern. If school evaluations are not answering your concerns, request an independent. Remember what I told you about an independent, go get it done yourself. Monitor the IEP progress by keeping copies of the schoolwork, notes from teachers, discipline records and report cards. Okay? Now, on report cards, they like to write their little notes. Okay? Teachers love to send you notes. You might want to start a correspondence book with the teacher. I don't know. That might be a good way, a logbook, to keep, like I said, contemporaneous notes. Teachers write all kinds of crazy stuff in these books that just bury themselves. I had one teacher tell a parent, the kid comes home from school, and the kid says he never saw that work. And the mother said, of course you did. You did this in school. And the kid said, no, I never saw it. Do you know at the top of the page, the mother read to me over the phone, she said, oh my God, he's telling the truth. I said, what are you talking about? She said, the teacher writes on the top of the paper, he was in the bathroom. I wrote the answers in for him. See what I'm talking about? She actually put that in writing, and she put it in the book, and she put it on the paper. So pay attention. Just because you think they won't do it, believe me, they don't know what they're doing. They don't think what they're doing is bad. Monitor the IEP progress by keeping copies of schoolwork, notes, teachers, all of that. This will help in building your case for a specific service, modifications, and or placement. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Now, I'm telling you guys all of this about due process and filing complaints and everything because of this. When your kid goes on an IEP, what you want to do is hit the ground running. You want to be prepared for whatever's going to come. And I'm telling you it's going to come. So what you need to do is pretend you're going to a hearing. So line up your ducks. And what your ducks are is evidence. You need evidence all the time. You need them telling you stuff. The more you have, the better chances you are at winning in a hearing or in proving your case in a state complaint or an appeal. Okay? That's why when I take a case, it's as if we're going to hearing. I just assume we're going to hearing. Because this way I'm prepared no matter what. Then if I'm prepared, one of two things happen. I either get everything that I want from the school without going to a hearing, or we go to hearing and we can win. We have a better chance of winning because I've lined up all the ducks. I got all the records. I got everything. Okay? So remember, this is the information you must know in order to help your child. Every school district knows and is banking on the fact that you do not know your rights. And even if you do not have the full understanding of how knowing your rights can help your child. My workshops and trainings are designed to educate, inform, and most importantly, teach you what to do with that knowledge. Recourse are the options that are available. Knowing what those options are levels the playing field. The door is locked. Right now it's locked. Now you have the key. It's time to unlock the door and walk in. Unlocking the door opens up the possibilities for your child.